Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Last year,
it's happened!
They went and took it.
He struck him out looking!
This year,
the Texas Rangers win the World Series!
They're here to run it back.
It's over!
This is Believe in Texas Rangers, hosted by Mitch Ferreldis.
If only one guy gets to go, who would you vote for? Welcome into this episode of Believe in Texas Rangers. Be sure if you like what you're listening to, you ring the bell and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of Believe in Texas Rangers on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube at Believe in Texas Rangers on YouTube, or just search my name, Mitch Ferreldis. That's where you can also watch episodes of every podcast, or you can always find us on the Believe podcast landing page. And instead of doing game recap, because it was a rather forgetful series against the Tigers, they lost 2 out of 3. The Rangers did. The pitching continued to be fantastic. It was fantastic in all 3 games. Unfortunately, it only resulted in 1 win. The offense only showed up on the Wednesday. Josh Smith had a fantastic game on Wednesday. He deserves his flowers for the way he hit. Jonah Heim hit a home run. Everything seemed to be clicking for the offense, but only on one of the days against the Tigers. So instead, I wanted to start today's episode by talking about something that is meaningful to the city of Dallas this year. And that is the fact that in case you didn't know because you're living under a rock, or maybe you're listening to this and you don't follow Rangers baseball all that much, Texas is hosting this year's All-Star game. Texas Rangers, I should say, are hosting this year's All-Star game. It will be at Globe Life Field. And when you consider last year and the fact that they had the most starters in the American League, if I recall correctly, I think it was 5 with Heim, Semien, Seager, Adolis Garcia, and Josh Young got to go as well. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But there was a lot of Rangers representation last year. And we're at the point now where All-Star balloting is open, so fans can go out and vote for who they want to represent for the All-Star team. And because it's in Texas, you would think that it would be very meaningful to send some very deserving individuals who play for this team to the game. Add on to the fact that the World Series managers are managing this, so of course Bochy will be representing the American League. And so the question that I have is, if only one guy, because it's guaranteed every year that one guy gets to go. But if only one guy gets to go, then who's the most deserving guy? And I myself am an avid All-Star Game voter, so I like to vote as much as I can, as early as I can. My ballot, as far as starters are concerned, has one member of the Texas Rangers, and it's probably not who you're thinking. I have on my ballot right now Marcus Semien to start at second base for the American League. And I don't mean that to be as I'm highly touting me putting Semien on the ballot. Because generally speaking, when you look at the statistics, he's one of the best second basemen in the American League so far this season. He's comparable to a couple of other guys, but in my opinion, I think given the circumstances of the game is in Texas, his manager is going to be coaching the team, and because he's got the top 3 in stats as far as second basemen are concerned, I think Marcus Semien is the most deserving to go. Most deserving to start, absolutely 100%. Now, there's plenty of other candidates, but I do want to talk about Marcus for a second, because he's kind of the guy that's been mostly overlooked this season, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that he hasn't had a lot of reason to draw a ton of attention to himself, because he goes out there, he's played almost every single game. He's missed one game this season, if I'm not mistaken. And he continues to go out there and do his job at a high level, hitting at the top of the order. So right now he's hitting 264. He's got 10 homers, 35 driven in. He's stolen a bag. He's got a 767 OPS. That's as it stands today, June 6th. They're taping this on a Thursday ahead of the 3-game set against the Giants. And when you consider the rest of the second baseman crop and all the other players that are going to be getting votes for this group, he kind of stands out above the rest in the American League. I mean, I'm pulling up the ballot right now. Here are your other options sorted by OPS. Michael Massey with Kansas City has the highest OPS, but he's on the injured list right now. Hasn't played a ton. So I don't think he's respectfully deserving of my vote to start. Jose Altuve is second. As good as Jose Altuve is, I don't have it in me to vote for him for the All-Star game that's going to take place in enemy territory. Davis Schneider with Toronto has a 777 OPS. He's batting .240. He's got 7 homers, 30 driven in. He's got a good amount of RBIs for a not-so-great Blue Jays team this year. And then there's Marcus Semien with a 767 OPS, a 264 batting average, 10 homers, and 35 driven in. Out of those top 4, between Michael Massey with Kansas City, Jose Altuve with Houston, Davis Schneider with Toronto, and Marcus Semien with Texas, Semien feels like the pick. Just going over those 4 guys just based off of their OPS. And then if you really want to whittle it down, I think the 2 leading candidates would be he who will not be mentioned anymore on this podcast, and Marcus Semien. And I find it highly believable that if the Rangers faithful powers this All-Star vote, Marcus Semien will start come the Midsummer Classic. I think that there will be enough support for Marcus Semien that he will supersede Jose Altuve to start in this year's All-Star game. Now, we do understand with the new voting system, right now you're just voting to make sure they crack the top 2, and then they whittle it down to the remaining 2, and you just vote out for that final week leading up to the start to the All-Star game. I think Semien has not only a legitimate shot to be named the starter, but he's got everything going for him in terms of how this All-Star game is going to go. He's got the stadium, he's got the manager, and he's got the fan support of all the people that are living in the DFW, like you listening right now, if you're a fan of Dallas sports. You want Marcus Semien to represent for the Rangers. Because quite honestly, as far as most likely to be given the opportunity to play in this year's All-Star game, and most likely to get the start in this year's All-Star game, Marcus Semien is the most deserving, in my opinion. Now, there's been a late surge from Corey Seager, and Corey's no stranger to starting and being a part of All-Star teams. But respectfully, Gunnar Henderson with the Orioles is having a ridiculous season. As far as a fair and unbiased voter, Gunnar Henderson is the most deserving to start at the American League shortstop position. Catcher, it's been a okay season for Jonah Heim, but not good enough to make a second trip to the All-Star game, in my opinion. The outfield has not had a great season, particularly Adolis Garcia. The numbers, as far as what we're used to with Adolis, are way down. Do I think that's going to inhibit him getting votes? No, I don't think so. He's in the top of the league in RBIs. He's got 40 of them. He's continued to be Adolis Garcia, even though some of the counting stats aren't totally there. The one guy I do want to talk about that could make an interesting case not to start, but to be there is Josh Smith. Josh Smith this season, as it stands today, is hitting .290, has just 4 homers and 24 driven in, but he's got an OPS of .817. Now, let me clarify as to why I don't think he's going to start. There's 2 dudes in this category named Rafael Devers and Jose Ramirez, who I think are both going to be neck and neck to start this thing. Add to it, he hasn't played as much, but Royce Lewis continues to just have a torrid start to his baseball season and his baseball career. And I think there's a lot of love for the Orioles, and Jordan Westburg's actually had a pretty solid season given his counting stats. But Josh Smith is up there. Josh Smith is very much able to compete with this flock of guys. And it's interesting because Josh had a low point earlier in this year where you thought he's kind of fallen off a bit and I'm not sure he's going to be able to get back up. Well, Josh has gotten back up, and Josh has gotten himself to a point that, you know, I would say vote for him if you're a true Texas Rangers fan and you just want to vote for your Rangers because you want to see your Rangers. But I think there's a legitimate case for Josh to actually make the All-Star team as a reserve. I don't know how it's going to play out. I know the manager doesn't have as much say in building the roster anymore as they did in the past. But I think Josh has had a very amenable season and one very closely related to that of an All-Star, especially one who would be an All-Star in his hometown. Or I guess I should say his home team's town, technically speaking. Sticking on the All-Star subject, because it's one of my favorite times of year, and it's one of my favorite conversations is talking about All-Star seasons and All-Star campaigns. I was reading a little bit of a story today, and the focus was on Jurickson Profar, who I'm sure a lot of diehard Rangers fans remember as he was supposed to be the next coming. He was ranked the number 1 prospect at the time. And when he came up and he played for Texas, all the expectations were upon him as to be the next great thing. That didn't necessarily happen. Frankly, it didn't happen at all in Texas. Fast forward now to him as a member of the Padres. And considering how well he's played this year, he's got a .320 batting average. He's got 8 home runs. He's got 38 driven in. And he's got an .891 OPS for the San Diego Padres. Shout out to AJ Cassaville with MLB.com, who covers the Padres, who got a chance to sit down and talk with Jurickson about it. It's a really good story if you get a chance to read it. But wouldn't that be just the coolest full circle moment? For everything that Jurickson has gone through in his career, for at this point, for him to make his first All-Star game and for it to be here, or there, I should say. I'm not there. It's not fair of me to say here. For Jurickson Profar to make the All-Star team, his first ever All-Star game, and he gets to play in the place where everybody thought his career was just going to take off in the immediate. I think that would be an awesome full circle moment. Now, he mentioned he's not thinking about it that way. And, you know, being named to an All-Star team, it's a great honor. And it's a deserved honor for him in particular this year. But he had a great line about he wants it more so for his son. It would just mean everything. And I know that I'm sure his son would love a trip to Dallas as well to enjoy a nice little few days off and under the lights, and when all the attention is on you all. It's the best baseball players all at one time. I think it would be really cool if Jurickson got to return. He's probably going to be named a starter. I would think that the voting is going to trend his way, and we know that the Padres seem to have a strong standing and a strong support system for their baseball team. So I think it's going to work out that way, and I think that would be really cool. Now let's transition to the conversation that I had earlier with KNBR's Adam Copeland.
Now's the time to save 30% on wedding jewelry, only on BlueNile.com. Make sure your wedding ring is the one with your pick of diamond and lab-grown diamond bands, all hand-finished and graded for excellence. Or surprise her with something blue she'll love for life, like a stunning pair of sapphire earrings. Blue Nile's jewelry experts are available 24/7 to help, From fit questions to style advice, right now get up to 30% off at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
This episode brought to you by Progressive. Whether you're driving, cooking, or doing laundry, Progressive knows the podcasts you listen to go best when they're bundled with another activity. Much like how their Progressive home and auto policies go best when they're bundled. Having these two policies together makes taking care of your insurance easier and could help you save too. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save over $775 on average. That's a whole lot of savings and protection for your favorite podcast listening activities, like going on a road trip, cooking dinner, and even hitting the home gym. Yep, your home and your car are even easier to protect when you bundle your insurance together. Find your perfect combo. Get a home and car insurance quote at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $779 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome back as we get set for another series where the Rangers will be hosting a team that they have met previously in a World Series out of the NL West. Of course, this meeting took place almost 15 years ago, but to get some insight on this year's edition of the San Francisco Giants, I had to reach out to a good buddy of mine. He works with Tom Tolbert from 2 to 6 on KNBR 104.5 and 680 in San Francisco. And I can tell he's a diehard Giants fan just by looking through his Twitter. He is Adam Copeland, and he's joining me here on this episode of Believe in Texas Rangers. Copes, good to speak with you, man. How you been?
Dude, good to be with you, Mitch. First time I think you and I have done a hit together. We've worked together on some other stuff and done some other things together, sort of behind the scenes. But cool to be with you. And it is funny, man. I've as a diehard baseball fan, I've always had, I wouldn't say affection for the Texas Rangers, but it was the first Little League team I played for where we got those mesh jerseys, and it was the year A-Rod signed with the Rangers. So one year we got the red ones, like the old Pudge red jerseys, the mesh ones. The next year we had the blue ones, which were pretty cool. And then now Giants fans here in the Bay Area, I think everybody's got a little American League tip of the cap to Bruce Bochy. There's not a Giants fan, I don't think, to a man who wasn't rooting for them to win a World Series a couple of years ago. And always so funny how that works out, how he manages the Giants to a World Series victory over the Rangers. I imagine there are Rangers fans that were like, man, I can't stand this guy. I don't want to deal with Bruce Bochy. And then they lose one the next year again in 2011. But pretty cool to see him back on the same field again, Giants and Boch.
How about we just start right there? Because, of course, that is one of the larger connections that these two teams share right now is the fact that Bochy oversaw the team in 10, in 12, and in 14. And now he has just led the Rangers to their first World Championship this past season. But just generally speaking, the exit, as I recall, it wasn't the best for Boch, but I'm sure just hearing you talk about it right now, that there's still a lot of love from the Bay Area faithful for Boch.
Yeah, and for me, it's genuine because don't forget, he was a Padre forever. Like my whole childhood, it was like when the Giants decided they were going to bring in Bochy, it was like a 500 career manager, had made one World Series appearance with the Padres in '98, and then got beat by the Yankees pretty handily. Tandon Sturts got hosed on a strike three call that should have been called like the seventh inning game one and didn't get it. And it changed not the course of the series, but I think a lot of Giants fans following Dusty Baker and Felipe Alou were like, we need somebody who's going to move us into the next generation of baseball that's going to help this team win. And Bochy, to me, on paper, was not the guy to do that. As it turns out, he's one of the all-time greatest managers in the history of baseball. 4 World Championships now. He's taken 3 different teams to a World Series. There's a lot of affection for him here, but you're right about the exit. And that sort of coincides with it does coincide with the hiring of Farhan Zaidi as president of baseball operations. Doesn't change. I mean, it happens in almost every sport. When Joe Lacob bought the Warriors years ago and Mark Jackson was the head coach, and they had just been to the second round of the playoffs for the second year in a row, and he decided to fire Mark Jackson and bring in Steve Kerr, we all thought that's a weird move, but people come in and want to get their right guy or their guy in place. I do believe, and people forget this, Giants fans forget this, I do believe it was time to move on from Boch. I think both sides, both the Giants and Bochy, were ready for the next stage and the next thing. Part of that's tough when you still got Buster Posey and Brandon Crawford and some of the World Series heroes hanging on the roster. But in terms of Bruce Bochy's exit, they had lost 98 games in 2018, and then I think it's 2018, then 2019 they lost 89 games in back-to-back years respectively. So it was time, I think, for Boch to move on. The organization needed a change, but I mean, it's pretty clear he still has it. He said he was waiting for the right opportunity. You hear guys say that after they retire many times. I thought the Rangers was an awkward and interesting, weird sort of opportunity for Boch, but what do I know? I mean, the guy took him back to a world championship, and he's looking to do it again. I mean, they've got work to do under 500 here, but they're working their way back.
I mean, if we just turn this into a casual back and forth about Bochy, we consider the two teams that he brought to the World Series. The Giants very much built up from the guys that they drafted, right? Like everybody refers to Posey, and then later on it was Belt, and it was Crawford, and there was Joe Panic. Like a lot of the guys were built up through their own system, Madison Bumgarner. This Rangers iteration, it's kind of a unique challenge for Boch in a sense that it was a very heavily purchased team. When you consider Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, they pay for Jacob deGrom. They acquire Max Scherzer, who's got a hefty price tag. It's very interesting to look at Boch being able to manage these two different types of team builds. And obviously it has worked out very successfully for him in this iteration too.
Something I think about with Bruce Bochy a lot of the time, and I think Rangers fans are coming to know this, and we'll eliminate his ejection last week when he tried to hand the umpire his glasses as he was walking off the field. I thought that was pretty hilarious. It was out of character for Boch, but it's also what you want in kind of an old school manager, right? And baseball's pendulum has kind of swung back that way a bit, where you've got to have a guy who has feel for the game. There's sometimes an analytic out there that you say, yeah, I know this guy shouldn't be facing this hitter in this spot, but I can feel that this guy's got it right now. Or Bochy will go out sometimes and have a conversation with a pitcher on the mound as a catcher would, not just to go yank a guy like most managers do, because now is the time to pull him. I do think when you look at the types of teams that he's managed and found success with, I don't know that a manager who hadn't been through what Bochy's been through in his career could have found the success he did last year with, to your point, a heavily purchased team. Now, Jonah Heim, don't get me wrong, he's fantastic. You got Evan Carter, who was insane last year for them down the stretch and in the postseason. These are some homegrown talent and some homegrown guys. That said, don't forget, Bochy managed a pretty damn good team full of homegrown talent and veterans when he was in San Diego. Tony Gwynn, of course, was there. He was a big-time superstar. Ryan Klesko had been a former first-round draft pick by the Braves. He had a bunch of big studs there on that 98 team. He had Trevor Hoffman, one of the all-time great closers. And then when the Giants signed him in 2007, part of the reason I thought they brought him in was because not only – it was a really weird spot. Not only did you need somebody to help you move into the next wave of Giants baseball and to be a solid manager and an old-school baseball guy with Brian Sabean, they needed somebody to manage the final year of Barry Bonds. Who could you bring in that Bonds was going to be okay with in the final year? They have great respect for each other. Both Bochy managing against him for years and years in the National League, and then managing him for that year. Bonds had three managers with the San Francisco Giants. It was Dusty, it was Felipe Alou, and then it was Bruce Bochy for just that season in 2007, but a lot of mutual respect. So when you look at a team that's made up of big-time talent, $300 million contracts, Marcus Semien, Seager, you mentioned Scherzer and deGrom, two of the greatest of their generation, and big-time personalities. I mean, Max Scherzer didn't want Dave Roberts patting him on the ass when he walked off the field when he was with the Dodgers. He's like, nobody touched me, nobody talked to me. Bochy to me is like he's like you seen The Departed?
It's been a minute.
The movie The Departed. There's a scene where Leo DiCaprio is sitting in the office of this she's like the police psychologist, and he says, you know what I notice about myself? No matter what happens, whether it's stressful or it's calm, my hand doesn't move. He's like steady as she goes all the time. And I feel like when Bochy's at the helm, whether you're winning 5 in a row or losing 5 in a row, his hand doesn't move. He doesn't shake. He knows what he's got to do in any given situation, and he'll take some risks to get it done. So I'm waxing poetic about Bochy, but it's not a surprise to me that he's found success based on all the different types of personalities and teams he's had to manage.
I was going to say, I'm sure the two of us could just go on talking about Boch until the end of time, but there are other things that I want to hit on with Adam Copeland, who's with KNBR in San Francisco. This iteration of the Giants, you think about the 2021 team that won 107 games. It respectfully almost feels like the anomaly season now, fast forwarding to what the Giants are currently. But they were very aggressive this offseason, and maybe it was one of those Farhan Saidi is on the hot seat style of off seasons where he spends big to make sure he gets big talent in to prove that, hey, I can still do this. But for the most part, just given record-wise, a few games under 500 and just coming off of a 6-game losing streak, getting the win yesterday, it doesn't feel like it's borne the fruit that Zaidi was hoping for this season. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, to this point, I think the number one thing you think about is the Giants handed out the largest contract they ever had to an offensive player in free agency, and that was Jung-Hoo Lee. They had never landed a contract of that magnitude. Now, it wasn't an insane contract. It was over $100 million. That said, they have not been in the business, or let me rephrase. They haven't been successful in the business of landing high-priced free agent talent. They tried hard for Aaron Judge a couple of off seasons ago, and it's pretty clear Aaron Judge played them against the Yankees or played the Yankees against them in order to get that extra year. And the Giants were never going to hand out that 9th season or whatever it was, or the 9th year contract. They also didn't get an opportunity to match that deal. It's where he wanted to go. They tried for Yamamoto. Yamamoto wanted to be a Dodger. Shohei Ohtani got the same offer from the Giants per the Giants CEO, Larry Baer, and their chairman, Greg Johnson. They made the same offer that the Dodgers did. He got the offers, and he decided if they're going to do what I want, that's where I want to go. I want to stay in Los Angeles and play for the Dodgers. They actually landed Carlos Correa a couple of off seasons ago, and then he failed the physical. And it's not even just on the Giants. The Mets got him too. The Mets did the exact same thing and did not agree once the physical was done. And he's a Minnesota Twin yet again. So they went out and they spent a lot of big. It was sort of twofold this offseason. Last year, the Giants dropped to 17th in attendance, which is the lowest they've had. They've been in attendance in the ballpark's history around now 25 seasons of Oracle Park. Now, Barry Bonds is chasing records for the first 8 years of that. Then you roll right into the World Series years. Then we got into COVID. And since COVID, people haven't really come back. You've got the 49ers, who are a great team and lots of success of late, and people are desperate and hungry for a championship there. The Warriors, you're trying to see the end of the Steph Curry run here, and they were fighting for a playoff spot down the stretch. So the fan interest in the Giants right now is, I won't say at an all-time low. I'll say they had work to do this offseason to prove that they could land players that people knew. Now, you were right about saying 2021 was a lightning in a bottle, kind of magic carpet ride type of season. There's no reason Donovan Solano should have been winning Silver Sluggers and doing what he was doing. They got great pitching. Logan Webb was insane at the back half of that season. Kevin Gossman isn't even here anymore. I mean, the entire roster is almost different. Buster Posey had like the best season he'd had since his MVP year almost in 2012, back in 2021, which was his final year. So I do think that they've underachieved to this point. The bigger concern for me is less about some of the injuries and the lack of impact from guys like Jorge Soler, who had a big solo home run yesterday but isn't hitting with guys on base. The injuries are a problem. It's the starting pitching. The starting pitching, we looked at the rotation coming into this year thinking the Giants might have too many pitchers, which is never a thing. You never have too many pitchers. But they were looking at a rotation of Logan Webb, Blake Snell when he got ready, Alex Cobb when he got ready, Keaton Wynn, who then got hurt and could be returning this weekend, either on Sunday against the Rangers or back here on Monday against the Astros. You've got Jordan Hicks, who was a question mark, but has been pretty damn good to this point in the season. They added Robbie Ray over the offseason. Mason Black is a guy out of the minors who we've seen make a couple of starts. And then Tristan Beck. We thought they had like 8 or 9 guys that were going to slot into this rotation and be problematic for the rest of the league. And we thought if you get to the postseason and you've got 5 starters who are healthy, hell, you may be the most dangerous team getting to the playoffs. Right now, none of that has come to fruition. So I would say, considering the number of injuries and the lack of offense and 5 and 6 game losing streaks, or 3 and 6 game losing streaks, have had a lot of those throughout this season. I think the Giants, if they can get healthy pitching wise, it's pretty bunched up behind those top crop teams in the National League. The Phillies are good. The Dodgers are good. The Braves are fantastic. Everybody else, I don't know if the Giants are worse than the Cubs. I don't know if they're worse or all that much worse than the Cardinals. We'll see when they match up. But right now, these types of games against teams that are wild card opponents are far more important. Giants and Diamondbacks was a much bigger series, I thought, than Giants and Yankees. And the same will be said about when they play some of those teams next week after they get past some of these American League opponents.
I think I saw a note from Bob Nightingale with USA Today, and he pointed out that only 2 teams are not within 4 games of a wild card spot, just to point out kind of the parity that we've had the first couple of months, which of course is good news for the Giants because that means they're going to be very much in it throughout most of these dog days of summer. I want to ask you, because the big offseason additions, they were big. Matt Chapman, Jorge Soler, as you mentioned, Blake Snell, Jung-Hoo Lee is out for the season. I know that a lot of Giants fans are really bummed about that. But if I were to ask in terms of disappointment or who you're hoping would have a better next few months of their season, who do you point to in particular of the big offseason acquisitions?
Of the big offseason acquisitions, I think number one has to be Blake Snell. he's a guy who's not just pitching for the Giants this year. I mean, he's on a 2-year, he's on a 1-and-1 deal, right? He's on one of those old Kevin Durant contracts where he gets an opt-out after this year. And if you're a left-handed starting pitcher at the caliber that Blake Snell is, and you got your $30+ million a year, you're looking to make sure that ends up being another $100+ million or $150 million contract. He obviously didn't get the number of years he wanted. The Giants really, if they want to win and they want to compete for a playoff spot and win 85 games, which is another frustration that teams now seem to be just saying, hey, we can be the Diamondbacks or we can be the Phillies from a couple of years ago. We only need 85 or 86 wins. We can get in as a wild card spot. And if we've got enough pitching, who knows what can happen? I mean, it's so funny. To your point, Arizona was built all from within last year. And then they went out and they had all these additions in the offseason. And they're finding less success right now than they were last season. So for me, it's probably Blake Snell. If we're going to go on the pitching side of things, they really need him to show up. It's not just because they're paying him big money. The money is really not problematic considering how long he's here. But if he opts into this deal next year, then you've got a guy pitching on a 1 year who's looking for another contract. That said, you need to eat some of these innings. The Giants are second in all of baseball right now. Could be just behind the Rangers in terms of innings pitched out of their bullpen to this point in the season. They're going like 2 bullpen games a week at this point, which is why they're desperate to get Keaton Winn back. So for me, it's Blake Snell. You not only need him to pitch, you need him to pitch so he's never going to give you 7, right? He's almost never going to get you into the 7th inning or into the 8th inning, but you need him to give you that 5. And that's kind of the desperation the Giants are in right now when it comes to rotation. When it comes to the offense, Jorge Soler, I think the number is 17 or 18 RBIs or something at this point. He's got 8 home runs. He's come to bat with over 100 guys on base in scoring position this year and has driven in virtually none. I mean, I think 6 of his 8 home runs are solo home runs this year. So he's supposed to be a guy that's for power. He's supposed to drive in runs. He's had a lot of bad luck. Yesterday he hit one up the middle. So hard that the runner wasn't able to score from second base. He hit one yesterday, bases loaded right at third baseman Eugenio Suarez, who picks it and throws a guy out at home plate. So he's finding some bad luck, but they need to drive in more runs. They need to hang crooked numbers, and they've got to get some of these starting pitchers deeper into ball games. So Blake Snell and Jorge Soler are the top 2 for me.
Last one I want to ask you, and I probably should have tried to group him in with these big offseason acquisitions, because I think one of the more notable moves that the Giants made was the hiring of Bob Melvin, who is a guy that's shown to have proven success, at least through the regular season. The postseason has not been in his favor in, unfortunately, any of his terms anywhere. Gets to the NLCS with the Diamondbacks back in 2007, gets to the NLCS with the Padres back in 2022. But so far, it feels like Bob Melvin has brought a breath of fresh air, so to speak, post-Kapler regime. Would you agree?
Yeah, I want to sprinkle one more in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he might be the only manager to have lost 3 wildcard games.
Ooh,
I think he lost that one in Kansas City. I think he lost the one in Kansas City with the A's, because he was a manager of the A's, right? He mentioned that one in Kansas City, that wildcard game where John Lester started, and they had traded Yoenis Cespedes that same trade deadline. It was a weird season for the A's. They were on fire, one of the best teams in baseball. Ended up in the wildcard game. They lost that one. They lost the one at Yankee Stadium where he opened with Liam Hendricks. You remember that? He has Liam Hendricks as the opener in that game, and Aaron Judge takes him yard. And then they face the Rays, where Yandy Diaz hadn't played in like 2 months, and he shows up and it's 2 home runs to start that game. So anyway, back to Bob Melvin, who, by the way, Bay Area guy, went to Cal, played baseball at Cal, manages the A's and the Giants. It's a pretty cool thing. Plus, he played for the Giants as a backup catcher in the Bob Brenly years when he was the starter back in the 80s. For the Giants. So I think, one, for old school Giants fans, yeah, it's a pretty big pendulum swing from Gabe Kapler, who is posting videos on TikTok of himself getting dressed, versus a guy like Bob Melvin, who's like an old school catcher and understands the intricacies and ins and outs of what a player is going through. Not to say that Gabe Kapler didn't. I think Gabe did a lot of good things. I also think Gabe was not maybe the right fit for where this organization needs to be. There's some frustration from fans right now with how the lineup has been handled, with some of the decisions, but I do think that Bob Melvin is the right guy for this team. I don't think there's anybody else in baseball right now. I mean, there's a handful of guys that you'd want to be your manager, but he's one of those guys where if you were not going to have Bob Melvin as your manager, you go, well, who else are we having? If you're getting rid of him, who else is it going to be? It better be one of the top guys, because he's one of the most respected in the game. So again, we're 60 some odd games in. It's June the 6th. I don't know that we have a real feel yet for what this team is because of the injuries, and they're still trying to shake some things out. Luis Matos was optioned back to AAA yesterday, but I think fans in general are very excited about Bob Melvin being here. I did a lot of fan fest events leading into the season. He's more hard-nosed and a little bit more chapped than I thought he was, which as a baseball guy and a long time baseball fan, I think that's what you want to see. You want to see a guy who, like yesterday, will try to get ejected from a ball game to try to light a fire under his team. Despite his best efforts, he did everything he could. He used all the words that he could use. Chris Guccione wouldn't have run him, but I kind of like that back and forth too. The umpire goes, "Oh, you want to get tossed? I'm not going to toss you. Then you got to stay here just like I do." So I like that Melvin's here. I think we're all feeling pretty good about it.
He's Adam Copeland. He's with KNBR in San Francisco. He's on from 2 to 6 every day with Tom Tolbert during your week, and he does a great job following all the Bay Area teams. Copes, thanks so much, man. Always good to talk with you.
Great to be with you. Good luck this week. And, I don't want to see Boch win 2 or 3. I want to see us win 2 or 3, but good on Boch. He can get one.
I think we have a difference in opinion there. Thanks, Copes. All right. Once again, thanks to Copes. Always good catching up with Copes. We will be chatting again after this Giants weekend is done at Globe Life Field. So until next time, believe in Texas Rangers.
You know when you're listening to a true crime story that has an unbelievable plot twist that makes you stop in your tracks? That's what our podcast, People Are the Worst, brings you with each episode. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Rebecca. We're identical twins who love true crime cases that make you say, didn't see that coming, and we hate the people responsible for them. Listen to People Are the Worst now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.